order, and members of the public are advised to indicate their interest by doing so by submitting a speaker card to city staff or proceeding to the podium one by one at the time an item is considered. Members of the public wishing to address the City Council on items not appearing on the agenda may do so during item 5. Each speaker will have the opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes, once per agenda item, unless otherwise allowed by City Council. Speakers are requested but not required to identify themselves, both on any applicable speaker cards and in comments or testimony. Speakers are advised that their names and any information submitted on speaker cards or otherwise provided in writing to the city may be disclosed or become a matter of public record. No speaker should expect privacy of such information. Could we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Connors. Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem McCary.
Present.
And Mayor Horn.
Here. Okay, the Pledge of Allegiance. Rosemarie, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we come to presentations and ceremonial matters. And this is American Red Cross Month. So would you like to read the proclamation, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Proclamation for the City of Laguna Woods, American Red Cross Month, March 2025. Whereas caring for one another is at the heart of our community and exemplified by the residents of Laguna Woods, whose simple acts of kindness through the American Red Cross provide help and hope in the most difficult moments. And whereas the City of Laguna Woods supports continuing the life-saving legacy of Clara Barton, who founded the American Red Cross more than 140 years ago to prevent and alleviate human suffering. And whereas every day, ordinary individuals lend a helping hand to make an extraordinary difference for neighbors in need, whether it's providing emergency shelter, food, and comfort for families displaced by fires and other disasters, or donating life-saving blood for cancer patients, for accident victims, for people with sickle cell disease, as well as other life-threatening conditions. And whereas the American Red Cross also supports military members and veterans, along with their families and caregivers, through the unique challenges of service using vital skills, such as first aid and CPR, to help others survive medical emergencies. And whereas the American Red Cross also delivers international humanitarian aid and helps reconnect loved ones separated by crisis around the world. And whereas during March, we celebrate the humanitarian spirit of the American Red Cross and reaffirm our commitment to help ensure no one faces a crisis alone. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Laguna Woods City Council does hereby proclaim March 2025 as American Red Cross Month in the City of Laguna Woods and supports the humanitarian mission and accomplishments of the American Red Cross in our city, as well as the nation and around the world. Dated this 19th day of March, 2025.
Thank you, Yoli. And I see we have Becky Fiery, the Executive Director of American Red Cross for Orange County.
Wonderful. On behalf of the American Red Cross of Orange County and our Board of Directors, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Mayor Horn and the City Council members for proclaiming March as Red Cross Month. The mission of the American Red Cross is to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. Throughout the month of March, we honor the people who make our life-saving mission possible, who turn compassion into action and help others in times of crisis. Our workforce is composed of 90% volunteers, and every day in Laguna Woods, volunteers roll up a sleeve to donate blood, respond to emergencies, take a CPR or first aid class, and support our military community. Red Cross Month has been a cherished tradition since 1943 when President Franklin Roosevelt issued the first proclamation, and we're proud to partner with the City of Laguna Woods and deeply appreciate your support for our mission. Thank you to the city for supporting our community blood supply. Last year, over 104 units of life-saving blood were collected in the city to help our local patients. We invite everyone to join us this Red Cross Month, volunteer, donate blood or platelets, take a class, or make a donation. Thank you again for recognizing Red Cross Month.
Thank you. Is David Engwall here, the board chair? Would you like to say something too?
We also have one of our wonderful volunteers from your city, Anna, who's with us as well.
Welcome.
Yeah, so I was here a couple years ago, and thank you again for recognizing us again. Appreciate that very much. And I happened to be sitting next to Anna last night, Anna Rodriguez, at a Red Cross meeting, and she said that she was living here for the last 6 months, and I said, well, come on, let's go. So thank you all very, very much. We appreciate all that you do and the support that you have with the Red Cross.
Thank you. We certainly appreciate what you do. Would anyone else like to say anything about the Red Cross? Rebecca.
I used to work for the Red Cross National Headquarters for more than 12
Come on
years.
again, come on again, let's go.
Head of the HIV/AIDS Latino program, national and
Nice.
international. And that was my favorite job throughout my whole life, besides community privilege. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I applaud you and I love you.
Latino engagement program.
HIV/AIDS.
Okay, would anyone else from the audience like to say anything? If not, I'll open it to comments from the council. Pearl, Lee.
Well, I would like to share this quote. The world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because who look on and do nothing. I am so grateful for your staff and volunteers who dedicate their time and effort to make positive impact through the contribution in disaster response, blood donation, and community support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pro Tem McCary.
As a retired healthcare provider, I know the value of the work that you do, and it just makes my heart feel so soft whenever I hear the term, no one faces a crisis alone. And so just knowing that the American Red Cross is there to support us all can make a lot of us sleep very well at night. So thank you so much for what you do.
Councilmember Connors.
I have a lot to say about the Red Cross. About 5 decades ago, when my husband was on active duty and was stationed in Germany, he had arranged for the adoption of a Vietnamese orphan, and he got a phone call at like 11 o'clock at night and said, we need $1,000 wired to Saigon by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning for the airfare so that your child can be flown to you in Germany. And he said, well, heck. And so he went to see the Red Cross officer who said, fine, and he sent the money, and eventually the baby arrived and the money got back to the Red Cross, but they just took care of it. Then in the 1980s, during the Loma Prieta earthquake, or subsequent to that, the Red Cross set up a headquarters and a shelter in a high school in San Francisco. And we worked there for 4 or 5 days, and they were such an efficient and compassionate clearinghouse for all the services. And there were building inspectors lined up and high school volunteers lined up. And they'd get a building inspector and a person with a pickup truck and a couple whose house was red tagged and 5 high school kids. And they'd all clump together and they'd go out to this house and they'd throw things out the window and load up trash bags and whatever and bring it all out to the truck and take out whatever they could from this house that was about ready to be knocked down. And the Red Cross was the host organization for that. Then about 12 years ago, my mom's house was in a 21-unit building here in Laguna Woods. and there was a substantial fire, and everybody in those units moved out to Clubhouse 5. And the Red Cross was right there with blankets and chaplains and coffee and donuts. You know, within the first hour, it was pretty amazing. A few years ago, I went to a Red Cross event to celebrate heroes, and one of the heroes was a 90-year-old woman who was, or maybe 100, she was pretty old, even for us, and still giving blood 5 times a year. And I used to be a regular donor and hadn't been for a while, and she inspired me, and so now I am again, and I encourage other residents here. I go to the Red Cross Blood Center just off Lake Forest. It's really convenient, and everybody is so nice. I have this thing about needles, and I really hate lab draws and IVs and Red Cross needles, but it really makes me feel like I've done a good thing, so I put up with it. So thanks, guys.
So, council member, right now we have a new way of checking your blood first for iron before you have to give blood. No stick, so it's just a, yeah.
Okay. I think you are the great symbol of volunteerism, and volunteerism is so important in our country, and I think it probably started with this group. You're such a great symbol, and I think that I was aware of the fire, and I was the president of the board at the time of that fire, so I kind of remember the incidents with it, and there had been a previous one too, by the way, of an individual who had no insurance. So I understand and have personally witnessed people who have been recipients of your great service, and I really thank you, and I think the people in our community very much appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
I also want to thank you for all the reasons that people have already articulated and appreciate the volunteer work that you do. Our community lives on volunteer work, and it's just wonderful what you do. So we should take a few-minute break for a picture? Okay.
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, now we should take a picture.
In front of the dais, and somehow I'll move this. Wonderful. Everybody's in there, thank you. Good. Good to see you again.
Soon, but not yet.
Oh, good.
Okay, now we come to the portion of our agenda for public comments on non-agenda items. This is the time and place for members of the public to address the City Council on items not appearing on this agenda. Pursuant to state law, the City Council is unable to take action on such items, but may ask clarifying questions of the speaker, engage in brief discussion, refer items to city staff, or schedule items for consideration at future meetings. So I have here some requests for public office. Let's start with Rebecca Galad.
I'm here in my own name and representing Community Bridge Builders to thank the council for everything that you do to keep our city safe, clean, beautiful, and to tell you that one of non-council members hurts you, they hurt all of us, every single one of us. So I just want to say thank you. We trust you, we believe in you, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker will be Sunita Saxena.
I'm Sunita Saxena, resident of Laguna Woods Village. Today, I would like to applaud our mayor and her team for providing a vibrant and safe environment for our seniors. Our city, with its park and beautiful landscaping, is also a melting pot of different cultures. Your support makes this happen. Our city council has made significant strides, including receiving the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for presenting the city's annual financial statements in greater detail than required by law, and in conformity with guidance issued by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. This reflects the high level of transparency and ethical standards followed by our mayor and her team. Prioritizing our safety, the City Council decided to construct a network of paths and crossings to facilitate slow-moving vehicles throughout Laguna Woods. In spite of being the largest and most, or one of the most populous recreation-focused senior communities in the city, Laguna Woods has one of the lowest, I repeat, lowest crime rates in Orange County. Year after year, crime statistics consistently rank Laguna Woods City among the safest cities in California. The city has a safety element in the general plan that identifies potential threat and focuses on personal safety issues. Who else but our mayor and the city council members deserve accolades for keeping us safe? Kudos to our honest and hardworking city council led by Mayor Shari Han. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, Wendy?
May I speak?
Yes, absolutely.
Especially if you're going to say the same kind of things. Hi, everybody. I know most of you on the council, and thank you for all the wonderful work that you do. It has come to my attention that our wonderful mayor has been attacked personally by some of the members of our community. I happen to know this one person who has made those things, and she's not an unkind person, but unfortunately, our current president has made it okay for people to say nasty things about other people. And to say a nasty thing about Sherry Horn is just the most ridiculous thing that I could possibly imagine. I don't know anybody who I respect more. And so I just wanted to stand up for her because she can't stand up for herself. So, Mrs. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, we have Noah from Supervisor Foley's office.
Good afternoon, Mayor Horn and council members. My name is Noah Tuliao. I'm a policy fellow for Supervisor Katrina Foley, who proudly represents Laguna Woods as the vice chair of the Orange County Board of Supervisors. First, thank you so much for recognizing American Red Cross Month in March. As someone who had aplastic anemia at the age of 10 and whose life was saved through blood donation, thank you for just bringing some recognition and awareness around that issue. I really appreciate that. Onto my update, I have several updates from the county. At the March 11th Board of Supervisors meeting, the board approved the Older Adults Needs Assessment Report. The board accepted this collective feedback from residents and stakeholders to better understand the opinions, perspectives, and circumstances of older adults of Orange County, which serves as a resource in the preparation of the Orange County Master Plan for Aging. Vice Chair Foley said, "As our county residents grow older, we know that means a third of Orange County will be over 55 by 2050. We must plan for their housing, caregiving, and quality of life needs." The needs assessment kickstarts our efforts to build a master plan for aging that allows future seniors of all backgrounds to live well in Orange County in their golden years. Additionally, at the March 11th Board of Supervisors meeting, Vice Chair Foley proposed an item to extend the urgency ordinance moratorium on large-scale battery energy storage systems facilities, otherwise called BESS. This item passed unanimously. County staff are working with the utility companies and industry experts to identify where we support the development of BESS facilities. These facilities are necessary to achieve our clean energy goals, but not at the expense of public safety. This action will extend this moratorium for 10 months and 15 days to provide more time for our experts and staff to create guidelines for BESS development. The board also passed a directive to OC Animal Care to prepare a plan to present to the board to add additional operating hours for unscheduled appointments, assigning a community liaison, increased online reporting, and the legal analysis of trap, neuter, and release practices of neighboring jurisdictions. On to events. I want to invite everyone to our upcoming event. On March 29th, our office will be celebrating Women Educators Who Inspire for Vice Chair Foley's 4th annual Women Making a Difference Awards and Brunch. The event will take place in Irvine at the Strawberry Farms Golf Club from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Finally, our office will be coordinating town halls with cities in the district to discuss the county's master plan on aging. We are excited to collaborate with the City of Laguna Woods and its residents to shape this plan. It is important for us that everyone has a voice in this initiative and in our office's overall efforts. To better understand the needs of Laguna Woods at the county level, we will be sending a survey to the City Council sometime in the near future. We are committed to ensuring that your voices are heard both in our district and in the Master Plan on Aging. As we administer this survey, I just wanted to ask, would email serve as the best form of communication for the council?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we look forward to keeping in touch through that way then. Vice Chair Foley looks forward to continued partnership with the City of Laguna Woods to best serve our residents and business community. Feel free to call our office at 714-834-3550 if you have any questions or concerns regarding county or government services. Thank you for your time and have a great day.
Thank you.
May I make a comment? Okay. I did submit a name for the event on Saturday. I don't know how many of you know Loretta Shepard, but Loretta Shepard has been it was for leaders, and I submitted her name. I've seen talk about a volunteer. She is definitely one. And I did submit her name, and we are going to the event, so we're looking forward. That's very nice. I also wanted to comment on the battery storage issue. After the fires, there've been 10 fires, of course, in California with the lithium battery storage, and very serious fires. And I'm a little concerned, and I think it's something we should be talking about, and that is, should we be storing in the garden villas, which have an underground garage? I wonder if we should be thinking about, is that a good idea with the lithium battery cars in that area? Just something that it's worth our safety to consider. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll communicate that. And yes, Supervisor Foley is all about prioritizing safety. We agree with the positive that can come out of those BESS facilities, but not at the expense of safety. So thank you for that concern. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. If anyone else would have anything to say, you can sure come on up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Cabrera Spencer. I live in Aliso Viejo, but I just wanted to commend everybody here, including Christopher, specifically because I've always been inspired by people who want to help the community, and this is the first. I can never pronounce it, but in any case, that's all women. And this is the only one I've ever seen where someone has come up to the podium and said something positive. The only one, and I've been to many. So I just want to commend you for being an example all of you. I mean, just so many different faces and so many different perspectives, and something that we really need right now. And I'll be bringing my daughter to the next one. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to come and comment? Seeing none, unfortunately, public comments is closed. Okay. Yeah, I know. We don't always have such a nice public. Okay, so the next is the city treasurer's report.
Sorry, we have to switch. Or my microphone's not working. Okay, I'll be presenting the City Treasurer's Report for February 28, 2025. Cash and investments totaled $14,203,218 for as of February 28. General fund operating cash and investments ended at $7.2 million, and the general fund reserves are $3,753,700. Special revenue funds ended at $3,184,371, totaling the $14.2 million. Cash and cash equivalents ended at $1.9 million. Pooled money investment accounts ended at $6,363,911, with LAIF being the only pooled investment account at the moment. Investments in certificates of deposits ended at $5,908,665, totaling the $14.2 million. On February 25th, the Orange County Board of Supervisors approved the termination of the Orange County Voluntary Pool Participant Program. And upon termination, the county wired the city's account balance of $1,337,690 to the city's checking account on February 28th. The accrued interest for the months of December through February will be paid in the current month that is yet to be paid. Currently, we are seeking out other pooled money investment accounts to invest within the next couple of months to replace the OSIP account. Also in February, we had one CD mature with principal balance at $245,000. The amount was transferred to the city's checking account for cash flow purposes. Other post-employment benefit trust fund had an ending balance of $147,377 with a net gain of $2,525, and the pension liability trust fund had an ending balance of $287,605 with a net gain of $3,000. And that concludes the treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you so much, Liz. Okay.
And there is an opportunity for public comments if anybody wanted to.
Would anyone like to comment on our city treasurer's report or our city treasury? Thank you.
May I make a comment? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Chris, I did want to ask about where are you looking to invest with the investment change?
There are a number of government investment pools that I believe they function more as JPAs. They're not necessarily administered by a county, but there's programs like CLASS and CAMP. They all have acronyms. We're looking at those generally smaller investment pools just to provide a secondary option to LAIF. We got into the business of investing in two separate investment pools a number of years ago. I think we still like that approach from just a diversification of our portfolio perspective. But we'll bring some information back, hopefully next month, if not next month in May,
okay.
As far as what we've looked at. We're obviously going to be looking at the things you would imagine as look at liquidity, yield, past performance, those sorts of things.
We had such good returns before. It was kind of unfortunate that change occurred, but anyway, I was curious. I think we would be curious. It's our money. We want to know what's happening and what's out there. Mm-hmm. And so you feel they're comparable?
They're comparable, at least in terms of function. I mean, there are other investment pools that function substantially similar to OSIP. I think they generally tend to have fewer assets in them. And I don't know, we haven't gotten into looking at yield yet, but we're going to be looking for something that's comparable to it, right? It obviously doesn't make sense for us to diversify our portfolio, but choose something that is significantly lower performing than what we're
Right.
accustomed to. So we're going to be going through that analysis. Hopefully we'll find something that works. And then, like I said, in the next month or two, we'll come back to you and have more information to share with you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go on to the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council or city staff requests that specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and consideration of action. Members of the public may address the city council on items appearing on the consent calendar, regardless of whether an item is removed for separate discussion and consideration of action. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent calendar? Okay, would someone like to?
Calendar?
Okay,
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Okay, so,
Public hearings.
7.3,
Item 8.
I wanted to ask if we can take the agenda slightly out of order. Instead of starting with item 8.1, I'd like to start with item 8.2 and then come back to item 8.1 after we've had an opportunity to have the budget discussion in item 9.2. 9.2 and 8.1 relate to each other, so I think that'll just make a little more sense.
We just
so
need
item
approval. We don't need-
9.2.
Yeah, if we can just start at 8.2, we don't need to take a vote on it, if that's agreeable to everyone.
I thought you wanted to start at 9.2.
8.2.
8.2, okay. Animal registration.
Yes. And I want to point out that Jim Barris with Laguna Beach Police Department is here with us today if you have any specific questions on the animal licensing operation. This is a fairly straightforward matter. So we're looking to amend section 5.02.010 and chapter 5.04 of the municipal code. Both of those sections include language that relates to animal registration. The primary motivation here is to provide a more flexible registration term for dog licensing. So right now, our municipal code calls for dog registrations to be issued on a calendar year basis. My understanding, and Jim can chime in here too, but my understanding is that that is somewhat unusual, that cities typically provide a more flexible month-to-month registration term that allows for registrations to align specifically with the current rabies vaccine for dogs. State law doesn't allow dogs to be registered unless the registration term matches the rabies vaccination term. So it can result in a situation where if let's say a new resident to Laguna Woods moves in mid-calendar year, if their dog's rabies vaccine is not valid through December 31st, right now they're really left with only the choice of not registering their dog, which is a bad idea, or getting an extra rabies vaccine to true it up through December 31st, even though that may not be medically necessary for the dog.
May I ask a question? Is that a state software problem? Because I encountered this problem, and so I was wondering.
Yeah, it's not a software problem. So Laguna Beach handles our dog registration. They register dogs in Laguna Beach and also in Laguna Woods. They have already moved to a flexible up to 36-month, month-to-month registration term.
I meant aligning with the state. Is it the state?
No.
You still don't think it's the state?
It's not the state's problem, no. It's the way that our municipal code is constructed. So it's a relatively easy fix. We're proposing to move to that more flexible month-to-month system. In doing so, once we opened up Chapter 5.04, we elected to make some broader revisions, to reorganize it, to rephrase it. No real substantive differences, again, except that registration term. And then that section 5.02010, there's a definition there that relates to the registration year that is unnecessary once we make changes to chapter 5.04. So we've included red lines of all of these modifications in the agenda packet. If you have any questions, happy to answer those. There's an opportunity for public comment or public testimony here today. So my recommendation would be that you open the public hearing, receive any public testimony. After you close the public hearing, our recommendation is to approve the introduction and first reading of an ordinance read by title with further reading waived, titled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, amending section 5.02.010 and chapter 5.04 of the Laguna Woods Municipal Code pertaining to animal registration, and determining and certifying that the ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Okay, so public hearing is now open. Would you like to speak to that? No one wants to say anything about this? Okay, then public hearing is closed. Council, anyone have any questions?
I'll move the recommended action.
Actually, I did have a question. It had to do with, let me think back here on it because I had it in my mind and then I forgot what the question was. Oh, I know what it was. It had to do once again with the Laguna Woods. Thank you for your service, by the way. We feel we're very fortunate to be able to work with you. I wanted to ask you, I'm again back to the software issue, that a software group handles your billing out of Irving, Texas, I think it is. And is there standard software that usually comes with these kind of programs? Could you explain that?
Yes, let me introduce myself. I'm Jim Barris, the Civilian Services Administrator for the Laguna Beach Police Department, and in that capacity, I also serve as the Animal Services Manager for the City of Laguna Woods. Councilmember Moore, in response to your question, yes, we use a third-party vendor out of Texas called Pet Data to handle all pet licensing for both the cities of Laguna Beach and Laguna Woods. They follow whatever the ordinances are in doing that. Part of the problem, as the city manager described it, is that Laguna Woods, the current ordinance is very rigid.
Right.
All dog licenses must be from January 1st to December 31st, regardless of when the dog comes into the community or when its rabies certificate expires. And that's the reason for dog licensing, by the way. It's actually to address rabies control, which once upon a time, if you go back 100 years ago, that was actually a big problem in a lot of cities. Rabid dogs running around biting people. So to control that, pet licensing ordinances were adopted. Unfortunately, under state law, we can't renew a license for a period of less than 12 months, except for that very first year when someone acquires a dog or moves in, then you can prorate it in the first year. But thereafter, it's got to be for a minimum period of 12 months. So as the city manager described, what do you do if someone's rabies certificate expires in August and you have a licensing calendar that's from January 1st to December 31st? We can't legally sell a license unless the person goes and gets their dog vaccinated where the expiration date is equal to or surpasses the expiration of the pet license. So what a lot of cities have done, like Laguna Beach, for example, is you have this flexible licensing system that's good from anywhere from 12 to 36 months. It's at the choice of the applicant. If they only want a license for 5 months or 7 months or 12 months, that's fine, so long as it doesn't go past the expiration date of the rabies certificate. That's actually a very easy system, and you can divide the registration fee by 12 or whatever the monthly term is that they desire. The challenge that we've had with Laguna Woods, and this relates to the third-party vendor, is because the term is so rigid, January 1 to December 31st, the instructions to them are they can't sell a license to a resident unless they've got that valid rabies certificate. So communicating that to someone and getting them to upload the proof of their rabies, to them so they can verify all that has proven challenging for some folks. And that's why we think this would be a much more resident-friendly and customer-friendly approach. People won't have to have unnecessary vaccinations, spend more money than they want. There's more customer choice. If they want to get a 36-month license, okay. If they only want it for 15 months, okay. Whatever works best for them.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, but I think it makes a whole lot of sense of having a flexible system that will help our residents here.
Yeah, I do too. You don't want to have your dog vaccinated 2 or 3 times a year, so or have it wait, not be vaccinated at all. So this makes a lot more sense. You want to move this?
Sure. I'll move the recommended action.
I second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Do you want to go back to 8.1?
No, we can continue through now. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, we'll go on to 9.1 then. Zoning title of Laguna Woods Municipal Code.
9.1 is just the second reading of the zoning ordinance that was introduced and approved for first reading at your meeting on February 19th. You also conducted a public hearing at that time. This amends various portions of Title 13, which is the zoning code for the city. Your agenda packet includes a table that identifies the rationale for each of those modifications and then the red lines for those modifications as well. There is an opportunity for public comments again today, but I want to read the recommended action before we get to that point. Approve second reading and adopt an ordinance read by title with further reading waived, titled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, amending sections 13.06.010, 13.10.020, 13.10.030, 13.12.020, 13.12.030, 13.13.020, 13.18.050, 13.18.070, 13.25.040, 13.26.025, 13.26.150, and 13.26.160, and repealing section 13.26.050 of Title 13, Zoning of the Laguna Woods Municipal Code, pertaining to definitions, permitted and prohibited uses, development standards, off-street parking regulations, inclusionary housing, cannabis storefront retailers, animal hospitals and clinics, pets and animals, residential multiple family standards and requirements, and other zoning-related matters, and determining and certifying that the ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. With that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor for public comments.
Okay, our public comments are now open. If anyone has anything to say, comment about any of that. Hearing none, public comments is closed, and I'll turn to council. Anyone on council have anything to say to that?
Yes, I wanted to say, phew.
That's hopefully the last time I'll have to read that. So.
Very comprehensive. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that this is what you do when you're awake at night and can't sleep, and you comb through our municipal code to find things
You're
that
not
are out
far
of date.
off. Yeah.
Thank you.
Instead of
You're
sheep,
welcome.
it's zoning numbers.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. And I'll move the resolution.
I second.
Ordinance.
Okay, so the ordinance has been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Now E2.
All right, now we're on 9.2, and then we'll be back to 8.1.
Okay.
Okay.
right.
So the,
All right, so item 9.2 is the start of our budget and capital improvement program planning. We go through this process every 2 years since we moved to 2-year budgets. Today is just the first of many meetings that the City Council will have, and many meetings where the public will have an opportunity to provide input in the budget process. We are specifically talking about 2 documents that the City Council will be asked to adopt by the end of June. The first is our next 2-year budget that will run from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th of 2027. And then we also have our 11-year capital improvement program that will run also from July 1st, 2025, but through June 30th of 2036. Right now, and I want to emphasize this is a tentative schedule, but I wanted to give you an idea of how we envision breaking up some of the work here. Today, we're going to talk about the first 3 chapters of the budget. You have drafts of those in your agenda packet. At your meeting in April, we plan to talk to you about law enforcement costs, which is obviously the single largest expenditure in the city's budget, and also about capital improvement projects in greater depth. That will actually take the place of the regular quarterly update of the capital improvement program. At your first meeting in May, we plan to review with you a proposed work plan, which is Chapter 7 of the budget. We have an additional meeting in May scheduled for May 28th. At that meeting, we plan to provide to you the General Fund and Capital Projects Fund detail. Those are the two funds that are not special revenue funds. So special revenue funds will come after that. And then on June 25th, that's the date that we're targeting for consideration of adoption of the budget as a whole. As we've done in previous years, we try to give you chapters of that budget in advance so it's a little more digestible and a little bit easier to provide comments and feedback on than simply seeing it one time all at once. That schedule's subject to change, but right now we think that's a doable path forward. Today, as I mentioned, we want to talk to you about the first 3 chapters of the budget. So that's the city background chapter, which provides just kind of existing conditions, setting information for the city. There's information on demographics and city history in there as well. Chapter 2, which has to do with the city's organization or staffing plans and authorized employee positions. And then Chapter 3, which is a budget practices chapter that provides some information on how the budget is prepared, the types of funds that the city has, and also the city's GAN limit, which we'll calculate later in this process for your consideration in June. These are drafts. They're very much working drafts. We've highlighted some sections of these 3 chapters to indicate that that's information we know we need to update before we bring it back to you for final approval. In some cases, there are data sets that we use for the budget document that are not yet released, so we've provided the most current data available, but there will be better data by the time we bring it back to you in June. And then some things like the GAN limit, for instance, we can't calculate until we know what our revenue and expenditure budgets will look like. So we do that at the very tail end of the process, which is why you see so many highlights in Chapter 3. So you have those documents in your agenda. I'm happy to entertain questions on any of those or to talk in greater depth, but what I wanted to focus on today was really the most material change in the documents that we provided, and that is our proposal to insource building and code enforcement functions that are currently provided by consultants. If you think back 2 years ago to the previous budget and work plan development process, we flagged for you at that time that we were going to continue to be taking a look at and analyzing whether it made sense to continue to provide building inspection and counter services, as well as code enforcement services, with the assistance of third-party contractors, or whether it made sense to bring those functions in-house and instead have them performed by employees. I think at that time, I also shared with you that one of the reasons that we were looking at this had to do with the increase in consultant costs over time. I will be very forthright that the reason that we contracted these services out was my recommendation 13, 14 years ago. At that time, and I stand by it today, it made 100% sense for us to contract it out. Where I'm at today, and the reason I'm recommending doing away with that, is the world has changed. Costs have changed, and I am now, there are a lot of reasons for this, but I think what I want to share with you principally is that I recognize that there are a lot of very good arguments for why we should keep building permit fees as low as possible. On one hand, you want to make sure that building fees don't de-incentivize people from doing lawful construction, right? We want people to obtain permits so that we can put eyes on it and help to provide some level of assurance that those improvements are completed safely and to code. On the other hand, we have the reality in Laguna Woods that many of our residents are living on fixed and limited incomes. We don't want the cost of permits to be either a deterrent to them making improvements in their homes and investing in real property in the city, but we also don't want it when it's a necessity for them, right? We tend to think of construction as elective, but there are lots of regular maintenance and replacement efforts that residents undertake. We don't want the cost of those permits to be unduly burdensome for those residents. And so at a very high level, the calculus that we've run through is that The only way for us to manage the growth of building permits over time is to take control of the single largest cost driver by a mile in those permits, which is labor. And it used to be that contracting out, the labor cost was far less than what it would have cost for us to provide it in-house. That has shifted now. And it is now possible for us to bring these services in-house for less than or equal to what we're contracting for currently. But because the city doesn't make a profit on building fees, as we'll talk about in the next item, bringing these services in-house will mean that, yes, building permit fees will continue to increase over time, right? Nothing stays the same cost. Everything, unfortunately, gets more expensive. What I'm looking for is this insourcing to allow us to moderate and smooth that growth rather than allowing it to continue at a greater clip year to year. An example of that is right now the fully burdened rate that we pay for a third party to provide these services. It obviously includes the direct costs of the position, but it also includes that company's overhead, which we have no control over, and that company's profit, which we don't collect on services that we provide ourselves. So by shaving off some of those costs, yes, it's true that year to year, employees will make more, benefits will cost more, our needs will ebb and flow over time, but our increases will be specific to our actual costs. So rather than, as happens right now, an annual 5% increase on the fully burdened rate, that 5% increase might happen with respect to an employee's base pay, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a 5% increase on that employee's benefits, or a 5% increase on overhead, or a 5% increase on profit, all of which is the case today. So I view this as a very significant step for the city. It's not something that we have proposed lightly. Again, big proponent of contracting services over here. I have not ever sought to simply expand the size of city staff to expand it. But I believe very deeply that this is the best path forward if our concern is providing services at the most cost-effective level that we can. In addition to that, I'll just note that building services are really the city's most prominent public-facing services, right? People are in City Hall every day working with us on these. We're in people's homes every day inspecting these services. It is not a bad thing for the city to take greater control of that operation by insourcing those services. So what we're proposing in this budget document, and again, we're not asking for any approvals today, we're just talking to you about where our head is and making sure that we're headed in a direction that the council's comfortable with. We are proposing to insource a building official position, 3 building inspector positions, 2 permit technician positions, and 1 code enforcement officer position. Important to note that all of those positions exist currently. They are simply provided by consultant labor. So the question of like, where will these people go? They're already here. Really what we're talking about is how we're paying for these services. Instead of paying a third party for them, I'm proposing to move them onto the city's payroll and pay for them directly. The code enforcement officer position is currently a less than 40-hour-a-week position. All of those other positions are currently staffed full-time. My expectation is that we will, at least initially, probably seek to fill the code enforcement officer position as a part-time position, but we are proposing to authorize it for up to full-time if that becomes either impossible to fill it on a part-time position or necessary to fill it greater than a part-time basis. Because we're proposing to insource these positions, we are proposing to add 1 brand new position, and that would be a planning and environmental services director to oversee the building services and then our existing planning and conservation staff as well. This would be a total increase of 8 full-time equivalent employees, but again, all but 1 of those is already a service that we're providing just through different means. This is laid out in the Chapter 3 draft that you received in your agenda packet. We do, as we do every year, we included some narrative about if we do this, what do we think the future outlook for city positions would be. And we flagged that as we've done with a number of our other positions, including our accountant positions, management analyst positions, and there's a third one I'm forgetting at the moment. We do expect that subsequent to bringing these positions on staff, we will move to create dual classes for the permit technician position and the building inspector position, as well as the code enforcement officer position. That would be to provide the potential for career growth and development for employees. It would result in a code enforcement officer position and a senior code enforcement officer position, a permit technician position and a senior permit technician. The same thing with the building inspector position. Our expectation would be that employees would grow into those positions, which is why we're not proposing to come out of the gate with dual class positions. We would look to fill each of those positions at the base level, but then eventually create an opportunity for them to grow with the organization rather than topping out and deciding to seek employment somewhere else where they can move up into a senior or a two-level position. We also highlighted that with the addition of staffing, which would increase the city's staff from 10.25 authorized full-time equivalent employees to 18.25 authorized full-time equivalent employees, we do anticipate that at some point it will become necessary to add some human resources staffing to help with the recruitment, retention, training, employee benefits, payroll portion of this work. We don't anticipate that being necessary in this next 2-year budget cycle as we get all of this off the ground, but we offer this analysis as an eye to the next 2-year budget, that those are things that we may be talking about then, just like 2 years ago we floated that this insourcing was something we were very likely going to come back to you and talk about. So that to me is the big issue in the drafts that we've provided for you today. I'm happy to answer any other questions you have or provide any other information you would like. There is an opportunity today for you to provide more global feedback as we work on developing our budget and capital improvement program. We're going to structure each of the meetings this way so that the council has pretty broad discretion to provide whatever type of input you want to in the budget process, understanding that Liz and I are going through it now and we'll be working on it until we get to final adoption sometime in June. So there's an opportunity for public comments today, and then to the extent you want to provide any direction, you're welcome to do so. I'm not looking for any formal action today. What I would appreciate is if there are any concerns that the council has with what I've just outlined staffing-wise, it would be good to know that earlier than later. We will move forward otherwise with preparing the budget with this staffing model in mind. This is one of the two big cost drivers in the city's budget. You have staffing and labor as usual, and then you have law enforcement costs, which we're going to talk about at your next meeting. With that, I think I will just turn it back over to the mayor for any public comments, and then we can get to whatever discussion the council would like to have.
Okay, so I'll open it up to public comments if anyone would like to talk about this.
Since Catherine had just suggested this.
I about fell out of my chair yesterday when I read the budget. And
you only read it yesterday?
Yeah, yes. I went through the full budget and I saw that and I thought, wow, this is the right thing for the city to do, as we talked about a couple years ago. And I'm pleased to see that you're moving in this direction, because to me, it's one of the areas where you can make the biggest impact on the village and bring costs into line when people are modernizing or even just replacing equipment, you know, to have an inspector come over. I know many years ago you took out that if we changed a dishwasher and didn't do anything, we don't have a fee for that. We don't have to have an inspection unless they're changing all the plumbing. So I think this has been a good move. And Chris, you did a real good job of summarizing it and thinking through the process, and I appreciate that. And the village and the city appreciates the work that you've done on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Sure, Kate, come on up.
Kate Van Camp. Unlike Kathy, I have no idea of really what I'm talking about. But it's my impression, because I live in the oldest part, And almost, I would guess, 80% of the people who buy a unit redo the whole thing. And there's always lots of talks, and I don't know if it's the village or the city who's inspecting things, but seems like there's a lot of delays. So I assume that Chris and his eternal brilliance is taking this into account, but I would just ask that if things are not happening timely, it seems like a real good opportunity to consider that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, public comments is now closed. Now open it to council. Start on this side this time.
I should go last because I have a lot of things maybe. You want me to still go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. First off, I wanted to ask, does Prop 218, when you were saying, I don't think you can make a profit, can you, on your permits?
Correct. Yeah,
218 would kick in, wouldn't it?
We're only
Okay.
able to recover our reasonable cost of service, which we'll talk about on
Yeah.
the next item with building fees.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that we understood that one. Keeping the permits low is a good idea, and I think the comment we just heard, and I have to tell you my own personal experience, that I have a unit that has a bedroom that if there were a fire, the person would have to go all the way down the hall, through the kitchen, and through the living room to get out the door. It's unsafe. And at the time, that was approved. But when I came to the city and asked, they said, sure, that's a simple thing. You don't even need a permit for it. You don't even need, you need a permit, but you don't need drawings. It's going to be very, very simple. In fact, I'm not even sure there. It was really simple. However, I had the opposite effect. I went to the architectural group in the Third Mutual. This is not something I have to do. I want to do it because I think people should be safe. I want to do this thing. And they said, hey, that's a good idea. Just go over there to the permit office and take care of this. That's not the way it worked. So I went to the permit office, and there are plans for every single one of the models, and they have them. So all they have to do is hand you that plan, and when you look at a plan, you can tell when something's a door or a window. You can see it right there. You look at it, okay? So all I was doing was changing a window, and by the way, that I was told by our permit people who were very helpful, if this opening is greater than, it depends on the opening. And so I measured it. I thought, okay, it's 32 inches. I measured a French door. French door is 32. This was a simple thing. It needed no drawings. All I needed to do was to get them, the HOA to approve, and then come and take care of this matter. And of course, pay to have the window done and so forth. That is not what happened. I was told that I had to have drawings. How can you make a drawing of a window? I mean, you're smirking, and that's exactly the way I felt. I thought, wait a minute, you're not changing anything, because when you look at the drawing, you wouldn't know if that thing went all the way down or if it was just right across there. So the drawing wouldn't offer any further information, yet that is exactly what happened to me. And so when I said, I am not going to have any drawings done, so I guess I'm not going to do it. So it was the end of it. I did nothing more, and the whole thing just, to me, I was trying to make something safe, and that's not the way it worked out. Okay, I also want to emphasize that the state, we never, since I've been on, I don't know, since the city was formed, we never have changed any building rules in this city, ever. Where do those rules come from?
They're all from the state, with the exception of there are some local amendments that the Orange County Fire Authority recommends that we historically have adopted. But yes, the city has never, independent of those two agencies, dreamt up its own building standards.
Okay, and who is legally responsible to the state in the event of these permits?
The city has the responsibility to enforce the California Building Standards Code.
The HOA has no responsibility whatsoever. The HOA's only goal should be architectural integrity and to make certain that someone is doing something that's safe. So we have a problem that doesn't quite get resolved, and I am not suggesting a resolution to it. I'm just pointing out that there is a problem, has always been a problem since I've lived here, and that problem is that there is confusion between the HOA's architectural integrity and the actual permit. Those are not permits that go to the state. If they were never there and did nothing, it would not change anything with our relationship with the state, because we would be following the state. That is not following the state. I am not saying they don't have a purpose. They do have a purpose. Once again, there's architectural integrity, and I get that. So we get this confusion, and I hear I hear complaints, and yet I don't believe it's the city. It's my understanding from my own experience. I had good help from the city, but I couldn't do something that seemed to me would be a safe thing, and yet where did that problem occur? So I'm just pointing that one out. Okay, so now I want to talk a minute about cities and cities that get into trouble. And we're a small city. We have a good record of finances, and here's the kind of thing that we always have to be careful of. And I'm very supportive of what Chris is suggesting, but I just want us to always understand this, because when we start changing and we're creating a position, that's the one thing that has me. I get adding the people, and I get they have to have someone they report to, but here's the kind of thing that happens. When you look at the scoreboard of the cities that are in trouble, and they're usually older cities, and I mean that have low scores. We have an A. I'm talking about cities that have Ds or Fs. Even a C isn't great, but okay. What you notice about them is that they lost sight of the fact that their spending got out of control. It got out of control a long time ago. It didn't happen today. It happened way back. And so you have to constantly bring yourself back to the topic of how much money do we have. Chris, you have done, as far as I'm concerned, an outstanding job, particularly when things got really tight. You looked at every single thing. I've been very, very pleased with that, and I think our residents are, because they know that they don't have to worry about our city. They're concerned with their HOA dues, and that's all they should have to worry about, and I'm certainly on board with that. So I'm just pointing that out, that as we go forward with this, and I do think your idea is really great. Let's say, though, what if in 2008 we had a real downturn, if everyone recalls? Okay, what if we had another downturn and things, even when you think you have lots of money, believe me, there will come a day when you will not. I can promise you that. How would you address that? What's your thought on that?
So I have a couple of thoughts. So the first is that I think one of the things that the city has going for us that most cities do not is that we have fully funded our pension plans. And so and I'm going to generalize here, but when cities start to experience real trepidation about adding staff, it's typically because they have some large mass of unfunded pension liability that grows by itself, and then adding more staff to that compounds the unfunded pension liability, and it grows to an even greater extent. So one of the things that I think is fantastic that this council has been supportive of is fully funding our pension plans. I think that as we add personnel, my very, very strong recommendation would be that we stay on that path, right? That we continue to entertain those lump sum payments and continue to manage that liability so that when we're talking about the cost of employees, we're really talking more in terms of current costs of employees and not this legacy of, you can call it mismanagement or you can call it neglect, whatever it is, but this legacy that in other cities has created this bounty of debt. So I think that's one thing that's important. The other thing that's unique about Laguna Woods, and one of the reasons that I feel very comfortable about bringing these positions in, is, just candidly, I don't want to be in a position of laying off staff, right? That's not good for the organization. It's not good for the community. One of the things we're trying to do here is provide cost-effective stability for building services. We can only do that to the extent that we can afford it, right? So one of the things that's unique about Laguna Woods compared to other communities is we have historically, even as the economy has ebbed and flowed and dipped and improved itself, we have not experienced the pendulum swing of demand for building services that other jurisdictions do. A lot of jurisdictions choose to contract building services so that they can add and subtract positions as the economy does what it does without having to worry about labor unions and bargaining and negotiation and downsizing and all of that, reductions in force, that sort of thing. In Laguna Woods, I think it's a unique marriage of the age of our housing stock and the fact that people are, as I think Kate mentioned, people are moving into Laguna Woods, and in general, they are making some level of improvement and investment in their homes. You don't always see that in jurisdictions that have housing stock of varied age. The older housing stock tends to get improved. Newer housing stock, people decide that they can live with it. In Laguna Woods, we have kind of a homogeneous housing stock, which has everybody making improvements to it. In addition to that, you have a very rigorous resale inspection program on the mutual side that flags unpermitted work or work that needs to be done prior to a sale. That creates another raft of work that is constantly on our doorstep. And then third, because so much of the building stock in the community is common area, you have the mutuals with their recurring programs, for instance, re-roofing, that is perpetual, right? It's not like you get to a point and everything's been re-roofed and so nothing is being re-roofed in the future. It just starts again. And so that creates, because of the very proactive investment of the mutuals, that creates greater stability in the building inspection requirements, as opposed to other cities where, yeah, if the economy goes down, people stop making home improvements, right? They spend less on their homes, they spend more on food and essentials. We have never experienced that here. Our needs, if anything, over time have only grown, and I again correlate that to the age of the housing stock. But we have had this staffing level, the 2 permit techs, the 3 building inspectors, and the building official for many years at this point. It has only ever gone up, so I feel very confident that we're not overstaffing. I expect these positions to be busy all day, every day, as they are now. One of the nice things is that we have a track record with this, right? We're trying to insource positions we already have, so we have had several years now of knowing that this is the right level of service. You don't always have that, right? Cities dream up new services, or they decide to get into new activities, and they make a guess, an educated guess, but a guess of this is the personnel that we need. We've been able to road test it for many, many years now. So yeah, the short version is I feel 100% confident that the staffing that we've proposed is not excessive. It meets the needs of the community. I will actually say that we anticipate maintaining a contract with a third-party inspection firm to be able to augment our staff when demand spikes. I don't believe that we will be in a position of needing to reduce our staffing, but there will very likely be instances where we need to augment it. So we probably are not 100% out of the contract inspection business, but the vast majority of it would be provided by in-house employees under this proposal.
I have to tell you, this, I think it was really helpful for you to say this because, and I didn't think about the continuation of the, like the roofing, that's a very good point because I can see it is continuous, and it actually kind of leads into the fact of the reserves in my estimation because, and I'm speaking now of the community's reserves, and I can only speak for Third Mutual because I live in Third Mutual. Third Mutual, actually, I guess we really could speak for GRF too because the reserves are promulgated on the fact that you have something out there that you have to address, but stop and think how the village is operating, and actually that is not actually a fact. Because if you are repairing your roofs as you go along, it is not something out there that you're going to have a problem with because you're doing it. You have a program. And I think that the reserves for Third Mutual, that addresses, to me, it may be for United also, but because there is a program, which addresses, to me, most of the maintenance of the buildings, then it's not a fear that you have coming forward. I wanted to add one last thing, and that is keeping the permits low is critical because it does encourage people to, and I think perhaps you might want to speak to that, how we compare with other cities, because I did ask you about that, and I think if you want to comment on that, because the permits being low encourage people, and if it's not difficult, you see what happened, what I recounted with my own personal experience. If you want people to improve things, and it's in our best interest, all of us, that we improve things, then you have to make it possible for that to happen. I wonder if you want to speak to that. Could he answer that, how we compare? Because I think that's an important part of this too. Thank you.
Would you like Terry to speak to that now or during the building fee discussion? Terry, do you want to make some comments?
Yeah, if he wants to add about the how we compare, I think that's a good.
Sure.
Good thing to know.
Terry Madsen with ClearSource Financial, our fee study consultant.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of the City Council, for allowing me to speak on this topic. Yes, we do help cities understand their cost of service and establish fees for cost recovery. The underlying driver of fees is typically that labor cost, and historically what we've seen is that Laguna Woods hourly rates for service, the drivers of that cost and the drivers of those fees align very well to the region, but to the lower end of the region. And when we've thought through the concept of why that might be, I think it's because sort of the leanness of your organization, that you are not overstaffed, and so that's what our experience tells us.
I think that's helpful. Frankly, this is such a positive thing, and I think to realize that the rates are low, that you're going to be able to keep them low, and that what you have addressed potential problems. Wow, I think that's good for our residents to understand that. Thank you.
Do you have anything to add?
First, I want to address the question of delay. It sort of came up from you, but also it came here as a public comment. From time to time, and maybe more often than that, we get residents who come in here and say, my project is taking so long, and my contractor says the city is holding up the plan review or holding up the inspection or whatever. And then when we check it, we find that the plans came in to be checked on this date because we log them in, and then they get turned around within 2 weeks and go back to the contractor, and the contractor holds them for 6 months, and then they make the changes and they bring them back. And so whenever anyone hears whenever anyone has a project that goes a long time and they hear from their contractor that it's all the city's fault, I'd like you to come and check that out.
I confirm that.
As for this insourcing, it is a big step. It's nearly a doubling of our city staff. I think on the plus side, it's really excellent to keep the fees as low as possible, to encourage responsible homeowners to make responsible repairs. And it's a good idea to have it in-house so that we have better control over how we interact and interface with our residents. I am concerned, well, I don't think Chris is a megalomaniac who just wants to double the number of people he supervises. On the contrary, my concern is that he's stretched pretty thin as we are now. And until we get a director of the building department on board, and probably until we get some additional HR resources on board, I can see more work for Chris, and he'll have less time to amend our administrative code. I do see that that doing this brings on other expenses that I know Chris has considered, but it's just something else for us to think about because our budget is so lean. We will need a new position as a director, which is already, I think, incorporated in the basic budgeting. And we are going to have some HR costs, and we're going to have suddenly for us, a fleet of cars because the inspectors are going to have to drive around all day inspecting. So those are costs that are going to be facing us. And I have confidence in Chris, and I believe his analysis has been excellent and spot on this. And so I'm all in favor of it.
Councilmember Lee?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have in-house permit department. My question to Chris is, we were talking about increasing 8.2 person.
8 full-time equivalent.
8 full-time. However, did you say that 7 of them were already here working for outside contract? I mean, the licensing?
Exactly. So yes, 7 of the 8 are already here. We're effectively paying a higher hourly rate than we will if we bring those positions in-house.
Yes, so it's sometimes it can sound it can create misunderstanding. All of a sudden, 10 points went up to 8.2 or whatever. But in reality, we were paying for those 7 point whatever up until this point, right? How long have we had that the outsourcing the
number
personnel? Yeah.
I don't, as far as the specific number,
but
it's
close
been
to
several
that.
years at least, but we've outsourced for 14, 15 years maybe, somewhere in that ballpark off the top of my head.
With the same number?
Not the same number. We've increased it slightly over time. We used to have 2 full-time inspectors, and then work picked up and we went to 3, and that really helped us clear out. We've been very proactive with like expired permits, people that started projects and never finished them. So the 3rd inspector has provided some relief coverage for it.
So actually what we're talking about is 1 full-time director position, right? Because the other positions we already had it under different umbrella. So it's not like we're going from 10 to 18 overnight. We had 17, close to 17. So we're adding 1 director position to have the proper supervision of these new employees. Well, they are already here. So actually, it's not as surprising or astounding. The change is not that significant, I don't think. And also, in terms of real estate market, Laguna Woods Village is very unique because as aging population increase, they're looking for retirement community like ours. And even when the economy is not doing as well, you see the steadiness of the real estate transaction. It has never dipped significantly. It has pretty much stayed stable, if not has increased. And anybody that move in is going to look for some way of remodeling. Just about every single one of them are seriously considering some form of remodeling, which means we would have increase of business as well so that will keep our new employees busy. So I feel like we're talking about the big decision. It's not, but not really, I don't think. I personally don't think it's a huge difference between what we're doing now and what we are increasing, adding 1 more director level position. And it makes more sense for us to have a control over the licensing fees that will serve in a positive way to our residents, I feel. So I feel like this is a good position for us to consider and good direction for us to go. Thank you.
If I can just add a couple of thoughts based on that and the previous comment. One that comes to mind is, I agree, these people are already here. We're really talking primarily about how to pay for them, right? Whether we pay somebody else or we pay them directly. The other thing I'll note, though, is that even though to us, percentage-wise, it feels like a significant increase in the total number of full-time equivalents, it's worth noting that 18.25 is not actually a large organization, right? So we are still, I think, a lean organization. We are still not, the hundreds of employees that other cities might be, because we still do have a lot of services that are contracted out, but the math is different with those, right? The math here works out that it makes sense to bring it in. There are other services like engineering services that the math still doesn't work out to bring it in-house, so we've continued to contract it. The other thing I want to mention is we've talked a little bit about the director position. Just to be very clear about my expectations here, right now, the contract employees have supervisory, they have supervisors that belong to the company, right? So when we bring them in-house, one of the things that I'm concerned about is doing it right? Once we bring them in-house, we fully own the service. And in order to be able to provide, I think, the level of service that we rightfully expect, we need to make sure that span of control and expertise is appropriately applied. So I view the director as very much functioning in that vein. And at least for the next 2 years, as we get this off the ground and we establish it as our service as opposed to a service we're contracting out for, I view that director as also playing a fairly large role in the HR component of that division. And potentially after that, we might look at how we deliver those HR services, but right now they'll play a key role there. The other thing that I wanted to respond to, Councilmember Connors mentioned, or I think it was you, mentioned some other expenses here, right? Like vehicles, like HR, payroll. It is true, there are other expenses. So for instance, the way that our workers' compensation coverage is costed out to us, it does depend on payroll, right? So if our payroll goes up, then workers' compensation coverage is going to go up. It is true that it will make better financial sense for us, and I can explain this in a second, but better financial sense for us to purchase vehicles for those employees to drive. Right now they drive the private company's vehicles when they're providing service. One of the things I don't know what their arrangement is right now with their vehicles. They have their company logo and stuff on the side, but we have spent a lot of time getting ourselves into a stable and productive financial position. I think what we're talking about today is not, it's different for sure. Don't want to dissuade you of that. It's different, but it is not in any sense, I think, a risky move. You all know that I'm very risk averse, and I'm also much more a fan of contracting out services. So I don't get to this recommendation lightly, but I do feel very comfortable that it's the right path forward. Very briefly on some of these other costs, we'll be talking about those as we move through the budget process, but vehicles is a good thing to talk about now because that is another significant expenditure. The city has a pretty large fund balance of AB 2766 funds, which are basically air quality funds that we have historically had very little use for because of the ways that we're limited in spending it. Most cities use AB 2766 monies to purchase electric vehicles, which is one of the eligible uses of it. We most recently used the AB 2766 money to install the electric vehicle charging station in front of City Hall. Because we have such an accumulated backlog of funds from that funding source, we will be able to cash purchase electric vehicles for our building inspectors to drive, which will get us out of the business of having to pay the IRS mileage rate, which gets very expensive very fast, particularly, I mean, yes, Laguna Woods is not a big city, right? But you got to remember that the building inspectors are jumping back and forth all day. And so it's a series of small trips that lead to 30, 40, 50 miles traveled in a single day, even with our best efforts to kind of manage the routing and keep them in minimal travel time. So again, the fact that we have been so prudent and we have this fund balance and now we can use it for a fleet investment that will reduce what would otherwise be our operating expense of the mileage reimbursement, big plus for us. in other cities that, you don't get enough AB 2766 money, so you're having to cash purchase things out of the general fund or use other dollars. The fact that we have this restricted money available there, that we've already invested in some of the charging infrastructure that we can use after hours to keep our fleet charged, all of that is a net positive for us. We've looked at all of this as we've gone through the analysis. It's not just like we've looked at the salaries or the benefit costs. We have looked at workers' compensation, the fleet expense, the HR and payroll expense. Payroll taxes go up, right? The number of employees you have, the city's contributions go up. All of that has been looked at through this process, and I think what you'll see if you allow us to move forward with it is when we come back to you with the actual budget document, it will be as it has been every year prior, balanced with a little bit of cushion and with relatively cautious budgeting and accounting principles applied. So I don't want to take too much time, but.
Mayor Pro Tem McCary?
Oh, thank you. I think that my fellow council people have already hit on the points that I was going to talk about. So we'll just skip that and just go to the fact that it's much appreciated that you give us a background, the past, and what it was your thinking in terms of contracting out versus bringing staff in-house. And we also talked about future in terms of looking at the cost and what it would, the finances, and that's been brought up too. And so all of my issues were already addressed, so.
I just want to take this opportunity to applaud our city manager for getting us to this point over the years, for laying the groundwork, for making sure our pensions are funded, for making sure there's a car charger out there and there's money to buy electric cars, for being willing to go back and look at a decision that you made before for contracting labor out and yet changing it now based on a different set of facts that in different timing. Not everyone is able to change their mind like that for the benefit of the city. And I am just very grateful for your leadership and for your participation and for everything that you've done to get us here. So thank you. I think we all like this plan and think it will be good, especially since you're not going to have to direct all these other people. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you. That's all I wanted to talk about on the budget, unless you have any other comments today. But if not, we can move on to the fee study discussion,
Okay,
which does relate to this.
Okay, let's do that. Let's move on to the fee study.
All right. So I'm going to provide just a little bit of introduction, and then Terry's going to come back up and talk through the fee study itself. City Council knows that we do this every year. Wasn't always the case, but it has been for the last, again, 13 or so years. We take an annual look at our fees, make sure that they're covering our costs, make sure that there's a rational basis for it. And as Councilmember Moore mentioned in the previous discussion, we are only able to cover our reasonable costs of service. So this analysis is not intended to result in a profit for the city. We are really taking a look at how do we need to set fees in order to break even, right? In order to cover our costs. So we have, for many years now, gone through this exercise with the assistance of an independent third party, which is Terry and his firm. They provide their technical expertise and prepare that fee study annually. They do that for a flat fee, so there is no incentive for them to find ways to increase fees or anything. It is not based on findings at all. It's just a flat fee. And this is the case this year, but it's been the case in previous years that we generally recommend that the City Council establish its permit fees at our reasonable cost of providing service. And we recommend that so that we don't get into situations where private construction is effectively subsidized by Laguna Woods taxpayers at large. This study calculates what our actual cost of service is, right? It's our reasonable cost of service. If we choose to charge less than that reasonable cost, which the council absolutely can do, and there may be reasons you would want to do so, what that means is that we're subsidizing that cost with money from somewhere else, right? Our cost doesn't decrease just because we decide to not charge it. So we instead would need to take money from property tax or sales tax or transient occupancy tax, some other revenue that we get to cover our actual cost of service. Our general business philosophy is that whatever our reasonable cost of providing services, that's what we should be charging. That is why it is so important for us to manage our reasonable cost of service and avoid situations where it increases by unsustainable or undesirable margins. I'm going to let Terry take over in a second. I just want to mention that we did go through this exercise last year, as we have for many years, because we were in the midst of trying to figure out whether it made sense to continue with the contract approach or bring services in-house. We went through the analysis, but we ultimately did not move forward fee recommendations to the council. So the fees that we're talking about today have remained unchanged since, I believe, sometime in August of 2023. We did assess them. We were comfortable with skipping the increase last year, but these fees have remained unchanged for a little bit longer than normal. And I think what you'll see as Terry goes through his part of this is that because of the change we've assumed in moving from consultant to employee labor, the ultimate increase, even after 2 years of remaining essentially the same, is very minor. And that, I think, is the first example of us smoothing that growth curve by pivoting the way that we provide services. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Terry with ClearSource Financial.
Well, very good. Thank you again for allowing me to speak with you. As mentioned, our firm helps communities understand the cost of service and then examine methods for recovering those costs. As part of preparing this study for the City of Laguna Woods, we thought through the idea of your direct costs of service for providing these outward-facing services, and also the support services that are necessary to allow you to provide these services. So we develop a central service cost allocation plan, and then we develop what we call a user and regulatory fee study. The fees proposed for council consideration today are based on those studies, and it's consistent with prior practice of the City Council. Just as a reminder, we're examining what we consider service-based fees. So there's always some form of service being provided in these fees. It's either permit processing, plan review, or inspection services. And we think about the idea of how intensive of an activity are we providing. So we understand what is our hourly cost of service, and then we work with staff to figure out how long would a service typically take to provide. You know, in the 6 out of 10 scenarios that we might examine, would this be a 2-hour activity, a 4-hour activity, a 1-hour activity, and so forth? And when we know those two things, we understand our cost of service. So something that's less intensive would have a lower cost of service and presumably a lower fee than something that's more intensive in nature. Next slide. As Mr. Macon mentioned, the idea here is that once the city knows its cost of service, the City Council can use that information to decide whether to establish fees that are at your cost of service or something less. Because these are fees and not taxes, we don't want to recover more than our cost of service. We are limited to our cost of service. And the idea here in this chart is to reiterate that idea that if a service costs, the City of Laguna Woods, let's say a service costs $400 to provide, but Laguna Woods decides to charge $200 for the service, the city still incurred a $400 cost. We would say you have partial cost recovery. $200 was paid from the receiver of service, and the other portion of that cost had to come from some other Laguna Woods resource, and that's typically your general fund tax dollars that come from property tax or sales tax that most communities try and divert for broad community-wide good rather than direct service receipt. So that's the idea of this slide. In terms of what we're seeing, as Chris mentioned, it's been 2 years since your last fee schedule update. The updated costs indicate that you could adjust fees On the building side, by about 3%, there's, hundreds of fees in your fee schedule, but in the aggregate, we see about a 3% change on the building side. And that is under the assumption that you would move forward into 25, 26 with in-house labor. There's just some minor clarification items. One antiquated fee that isn't used that's been removed from the schedule, and then another fee just clarifying how it's applied and when it applies. There are no new permit requirements proposed here, so there would, anything you've done before that didn't require a permit wouldn't require a permit tomorrow as a result of this study. On the planning side, the fee change is approximately 2%, and on the engineering side, it's approximately 5%. And again, all of these changes are linked to the city's cost of service. Next slide.
All right, and then before I get into the recommended action, I do want to mention that assuming that we're insourcing the building services come July 1st, we also plan that when we go through this exercise next year, because staff will be our staff, we will sit down and go through a more robust version of this study and actually look at the time estimates, which Terry mentioned. The part of what we do here is we identify the actual hourly cost of service, then we figure out how long each, for this purpose, like inspection activity takes, or how long each plan review activity takes. With staff on our payroll, we're going to revisit that for the first time in a number of years. We do revisit it periodically, but we're going to take a deeper dive into that to make sure that it comports with the change in service delivery. So that'll be a part of next year's work prior to this point. And then the only other thing I'll mention is that we are proposing a July 1st effective date for these fees. State law says that you can't change your fees with less than 60 days notice. In the past, we've always said, well, in about 60 days, we'll change the fees. This year, because the changes are, again, really tied to that labor component, we're proposing to delay the implementation of these fees until July 1st, when that staffing change is effective. And then moving forward, I think it probably makes sense just from a budgeting perspective for us to stick with that kind of schedule in the future. We do like the idea of bringing this information to you earlier in the year so that we can post the information, contractors and residents have greater warning about an upcoming change in fees. But we are recommending that July 1st start date. So with that, there's an opportunity for a public hearing today. After that public hearing, we would recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution titled, "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, adopting new and increased or modified building and planning services fees and encroachment and grading permit fees, and determining and certifying that this action is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Title 14 of the California Code of Regulations." With that, I will turn it over to the mayor for the public hearing.
Okay. Public comments is now open. If anyone has anything to say? Seeing none, public comments is closed.
Sorry, I think we do have one.
Oh,
Come on.
come on. Yes?
Hi, sorry. Again, my name is Liz Spencer. Thank you, Christopher, or Mr. Macon, City Manager Macon.
Chris is fine, but thank you.
Sorry?
Chris is fine, but.
Okay, good. I like that. Okay, I just wanted to know, is there a firm estimate as to the actual cost of the 8 employees that you guys are going to bring on?
No, so we've made some assumptions in this fee study. There are some tables in there that reference assumptions for the base pay of those employees. We're still in the process of coming up with the salary schedules and the job descriptions for those positions. So this, as it is every year, is kind of an estimate of what we think it's going to be, but it's possible that those rates could be higher or lower depending on who we end up hiring, what we negotiate with individual employees. So there isn't a hard and fast number, but if you go into the fee study document itself, it does include by position an assumption of what we're going to pay those positions.
Yeah, because I represent a collective group that works with communities, and there's some creative ideas that we can come up with to like help recoup that isn't gonna reinvent the wheel and might be helpful for the community in a new and creative way. Well, we can describe it, but anyhow, just want to throw that out there.
Sure.
At least it'll be something interesting and creative and unique to the city. So, yeah, and I'll have a look at the total amount, and that's wonderful. And how long, is this gonna be a ongoing hire, or is it something that's gonna be, see how it goes, 2 years? Do you have a time set for these new hires?
No, so we authorize the budget on a 2-year cycle, so the positions will be authorized for that 2-year term.
Got
We obviously don't have control over whether people choose to quit or retire or anything like that. So I always view hiring as an ongoing exercise. But we would plan to make the transition as seamless as possible, hire so that we have people starting in these roles, at least in most of the roles, by July 1st. If we have to backfill for a period of time with contract labor, we will. It all just depends how that recruitment piece goes. But our goal would be to be able to kind of, to use an overused analogy, like to flip a switch on July 1st and have it be our staff and not contract staff. But then,
Always works.
yeah. Well, you know, best laid plans, right? So,
May I, give
yeah,
us-
absolutely.
Okay, because we have some creative ideas, it'd be fun.
Thank you.
Could you clarify? I thought I heard you say you represented some cities. Did you say?
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. I represent a group, and we work with cities and anyone that seeks to do something positive for the community, bipartisan, any race, any religion, whatever. We kind of brand new, but we all have deep ties into very distinct and different backgrounds, aerospace, clean tech for me, which is why I was interested in the conservation bit. And that's why I attend, because, you know, we want to help our local communities, even if it's just a little bit.
Okay, so you're not with a service. I was trying to figure out if you were the service who works with these kinds of actions. That's not what you do.
That's not what I do. I'm a creative problem solver.
Right,
Thank you,
thank
council
you.
member. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to comment? Okay, now seeing no more, I'll go to council. Any comments?
No.
Okay.
No comment.
Prior to this lengthy public discussion, Chris, have you had any comments with the 7 individuals concerned, and do you know if they're feeling like positive generally about this pending change?
So we haven't made any staffing decisions for these positions. We also haven't interacted directly with most of the currently contract employees. I mean, I don't know that we couldn't, but we've been trying to get through this discussion, and then we obviously need to have a discussion in-house about whether or not it makes sense to transition people over, whether they'd be interested to. It's obviously a one-on-one type of conversation. Everybody's needs are different, but I remain open to the concept of transitioning existing consultant staff over into employee roles if that's something that makes sense for both parties. So we will get into that sooner than later, because obviously that drives, the results of that will drive what we do as far as recruitment and efforts to be able to make sure that, you know, come July 1st, we have to be able to provide this service, right? There's no lag time between them, yes. So that's part of why we're talking about it now, is we need to make sure between now and July, we get our various ducks in a row so that the general public, when they come in on July 1st, it doesn't, you know, feel like we don't know what we're doing or we're in flux. So.
Well, I'm glad we're not following current governmental strategy about sending out a group email on midnight on June 30, so. Okay, I have no other comments, and I will move the recommended action.
A second.
All in favor? Aye.
Nice job, Chris.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're at city council reports and comments. This is the time and place for members of the city council to provide reports on meetings attended, including but not limited to meetings of regional boards and entities to which they've been appointed to represent the city, and meetings attended at the expense of the city pursuant to California Government Code Section 53232.3. Members of the city council may also make other comments and announcements. Coastal Greenbelt, Mayor Pro Tem McCary.
Thank you, Mayor Horn. May I give my report next month? I left my notes at home. I'd like to defer my report till next month.
Okay. Okay, Orange County Fire Authority, we had our orientation and an open house, the 30th year open house, and Chris has some pictures to put up there. It was really interesting and really well attended. This is Freedom, one of 50 or 60 dogs in the whole country that detects accelerants. And they put one drop of gasoline on an item, and this dog finds it and sits down, and that's the only way he's ever fed, is he works every day. They train, and he gets a few kibbles from his trainer's hand, and he lives with his trainer. It's a wonderful little dog. Poor thing is never full, but he's a very sweet dog. And see, there he is with his trainer, and the trainer's putting an accelerant. One drop. You could even just dip a pencil in a gasoline and touch it to something. And these little kids would choose where they wanted the accelerant, and he would put it there, and the dog would find it and then sit down and then show the trainer where it is. Very good dog. He's 8 years old. And see, he sits.
He's waiting for his treat, I can see that.
Yes, definitely. He's hungry. So, okay, this is the building where the fire authority is. This is where operations and dispatch and logistics and everything is. That's where we meet, our board of directors meeting. This is one of our helicopters. Go ahead. This is a monument to 9/11, to the firefighters that were lost there. These are a couple of the EMT ambulances and medics there, with my husband in front talking to them. This was the Irvine PD there with a couple of their drones. The large one can detect fires. The small drones are for active shooter situations, or if there's a bad guy hiding somewhere inside a building, they can send in a drone instead of a person or a dog and risk them. This is just inside the fire authority, the pictures of the different trustees. This is the dispatch center, the emergency dispatch center, where all calls come into. Like 90,000 calls a day or a week come in there. I don't remember the exact number. But they all come in there, and then they go out on these screens that are all over the place, and there's always someone there 24/7, and they can scale up or scale down. It's right next to the operations center, which they had activated when they had the LA fires in the Palisades, and it's just absolutely amazing what they do. This is a residential fire, and it shows you how quickly fire can spread within a unit. And from the time that your fire alarm would go off to the time that the engine and the firemen would get there is a very short time, 5 to 8 minutes maybe, till it's fully engulfed. And it's after they're done putting out the fire, they rake through the coals and they find if any people are left in there, or they make sure all the embers are out. And this is just our fire department at work. This is one of the hazmat suits and some of the other specialized equipment. They even have specialized trucks that go out and service fire trucks in the field if they break down. So they never have to come in and be out of service. It's like a AAA for fire trucks. And they were driving the kids around in some of the engines, and they did a couple of flybys with a couple of the helicopters. You can see how close they came, and these were the flames from the residential fire that they had set. And that was it. It was a wonderful day. There were tons of people there, and I didn't run into anybody hardly that I knew. I was really looking forward to seeing some people there, but it was wonderful. We got to meet Chief Fennessy. I got to introduce him to my husband, who was very excited, and he got to see the dispatch center, which really excited him. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place to be, and the people are very dedicated and professional to saving lives. So that's my report. Orange County Library Advisory Board.
If you don't mind, I'm going to defer that till the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District, Councilmember Lee left, but She said that they recognize the outgoing trustees and trustees' years of service, and a presentation on the 2024 year in review she will give at the next meeting. San Joaquin Hills Transportation Corridor Agency.
Sure.
Councilmember Connors.
We hired a CPA firm for our annual audit because we owe many millions of dollars to the bonding agencies which provided the initial funds for construction of these roads. We have some strict audit requirements, and we've had clean audits ever since inception. So the firm we hired is Crow LLP, and they have 37 offices in the US and 5 offices in California, and they're experienced in the tolling industry, so we expect good things. We do millions and millions of credit card transactions every month, and our credit card processor requires that we have a very high level of network security, so we renewed our network security contract, and they are there to prevent intrusion into our systems and to detect it when it happens and to help us craft a response. The firm that we hired we renewed the contract, or we gave a new contract to the same provider who has done us a very good job in the past. When the LA County School District received a ransomware lockout and demand, they contacted this company to help them respond, even though this company was not their regular network security company. The last thing I want to talk about is interoperability, which is a big word, but it just means that if you drive your car with its little fast track sticker on the Kansas Turnpike or the New Jersey Turnpike, the toll just shows up on your bill, even though you're using somebody else's facilities. And we've had trouble with it up until now, although Congress mandated this back in 2012, because we have state privacy statutes that prevent transmitting personal customer information out of state. And so we were allowed to send the other agency the license, the car license, the transponder number, the name of the tolling agency, and the date and time that the toll was incurred, but we weren't allowed to give them the toll amount or the location, like, 241 at Windy Ridge or whatever it was. Then if you can't transmit the toll amount, things don't work very well. So this is still in process, and it'll be a few years before all the statute, there's a statute presented by Connie Petrie Norris in Sacramento, and so far it's moving well through committee, which will allow us to share the information required so that out-of-state drivers can come use our toll roads and have the tolls logged against their own accounts in New Jersey or Texas or wherever, and our drivers can drive seamlessly on all these others and have their tolls automatically debited to their accounts. So that's a work in progress, and we're hoping to take a leadership role in that in the Western region in contracting with other agencies. That's it.
Okay, thank you. South Orange County Watershed.
If I could, I'd defer that one too. Thank you.
Okay, then liaisons to Laguna Woods Community Bridge Builders. We had our ageism video, Making the Invisible Visible, at Clubhouse 3 at the Performing Arts Center, and it was wonderful. It was very well attended. Our senior legislature was there, and people from all different senior groups that would, like the Orange County Strategic Plan on Aging and the Alzheimer's was there. A lot of people were there. We got little Oscars for everyone that was involved with it. All the 87 people that were involved for a year, whether they were writers, actors, directors, casting agents, we all got it. It's my favorite award, a little Oscar for being part of it. It was wonderful. Now one song is going to be done again. I know you all remember it from last year, where 300 different people came together and they sang in like 7 different languages. And the same writer that wrote that song wrote one special for us this year. And so we're going to sing that new song, Together We Shine, and one song, and they're going to record it. So we're going to be doing, if you would like to be part of it, it's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of the next week. So just get in touch with Rebecca Galad and you can be part of the chorus. They also have a play, a one-act play, one-woman play, Harriet Tubman, coming up, but that's May 31st, right? And that's in conjunction with the African American Club.
Yeah.
Would you like to say something?
It's basically a one-woman show. She does the life of Harriet Tubman, who has an amazing background in history with being popular for assistance with the Underground Railroad. And it's a very positive spin on a one-woman show. So we've seen it before at the Cerritos Performing Arts Center, and she was gracious enough to bring her show here to Laguna Woods.
This is such a great group. It's so refreshing to see people coming together for good purposes and making friends across cultures. So it's really wonderful.
And I just want to add one other thing. After the show, the actress who plays Harriet Tubman makes herself available afterwards to answer questions from the audience.
That's great. Yeah, as I should have added that there are trainings on ageism for questions from the audience and resources and what to do on each situation and who to call, like councils on aging and adult protective services, depending on what happens. So it's very interesting. The towers already took advantage of the training, but it's available to anybody. Okay, League of California Cities, Mayor Pro Tem McCary.
Where is that? Oh, okay. Other comments. Yeah, we attended Councilwoman Moore and I attended a Orange County Division meeting on March 13th, and my main interest was to hear from the insurance commissioner about information about insurance. However, she wasn't able to attend, and someone else was in her place. She did a presentation, but it wasn't very informative, and I don't think she met with a friendly audience either. So it was a presentation on insurance, but nothing really, I didn't think there was anything significant that she mentioned. There also was a presentation from a water presentation on water conservation and just what what's going to be looking like with new regulations about water, potable water, and plants and lawns and different types of lawn that will now have to be converted to, I guess, what do you call it? Non-portable use. So again, there was a presentation from that, and it was from 5:30 till about 7. Very quick presentation, very well attended, and that's, unless you had something additional to report on that.
Okay, then I don't have another report, but I did want to say that I attended the grand opening of Memorial Care's 55-plus facility. It's a little medical facility that has all kinds of examination rooms. They have an infusion center. They have 24 hours. You can call over there. They're right across from this little driveway here at City Hall. And it was just wonderful. They have all different kinds of doctors. No gerontologists, but they have internists and epidemiologists and all different other kinds of things. And they're probably going to do education in our library event space or here in our council chambers when it's done. So it's a real addition to our city to have a little place right here that everybody can come to. Real dedicated people. So, okay. Do we have a closed session today? No closed session. So I guess we can adjourn to our next meeting on April 16th at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.